Good morning and welcome to Catherine's Sunday School class. I'm meeting in Roxanne's Sunday School classroom today. So I'm just making a little tour through the building, and I am going to be talking today about the church at Ephesus. And I'm really excited about this because I didn't even know Jonathan was preaching from Ephesians, and I told him I think I would do my profile of a church this week on Ephesians on Ephesus, because I was reading through Acts, and this chapter 19 of Acts just struck me as just so powerful. And I thought, what better chance for me to speak about the church in Ephesus. And actually, there's so much information about the Church of Ephesus. I can't really cover it all in one time, so I may even talk about it again in the future. We have all this information here in Acts in chapter 19, and there's a few other references as well. And then there's the book of Ephesians that we learn, what Paul says to the church at Ephesus. And then there's Revelation also speaks to the church at Ephesus. And there's a lot of tradition about what happens at Ephesus after the time of Paul, that the Apostle John settled there and taught there. And so even the books of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John are thought to possibly have been written from Ephesus. So all of that, I'm not going to do all of that, but I'm going to focus on Acts chapter 19 and what we learn about the beginning of the church at Ephesus. And Ephesus is like a major city in the ancient world. It is estimated that 250,000 people live in this city at the time of Paul, when Paul first entered it. And can you just imagine Paul and the 2 or 3 young men that he has with them traveling in order to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. And as they enter this town, they are not entering some little backwater little town. They are entering a major metropolis, and it is their prayer and their desire for God to transform this place, to make disciples. And that is exactly what happens. Before the end of chapter 19, the entire city, and this is a 2 to 3 year time that Paul spends in Ephesus, it is turned on its head, and the Christians are widely known. And wow, I just think it says so much about the God's work through Paul and this very small group, that they are able to accomplish this in just such a short time. So if you haven't read chapter 19 of the book of Acts recently, I'd invite you to just pause this video right now and go ahead and do that, and you'll get a lot of background to the church at Ephesus. I love how it starts, that Paul went to Ephesus, and there he found some disciples, and he asked them, "Did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed?" And they answered, "No, we have not even heard that there is a Holy Spirit." And Paul asked, "What is the baptism? What baptism did you receive?" And they say, "John's baptism." Now, it is amazing that here we are 30 years after John the Baptist preached in Judea, and 30 years later, here are disciples of John, disciples of the way that he was teaching, and they're hundreds of miles away in Ephesus, and they're still clinging to that tradition and to those teachings. And Paul recognizes right away, these are people that are ready for the full gospel, not just the part that John knew of, that led the way, that made the way for the Messiah, but for the full thing and for the Holy Spirit. And so right then and there, he told them about this, and he places his hands on them, and the Holy Spirit came on them, and they spoke in tongues and prophesied, it says in verse 6. So I just love that picture of, he's starting with this group of people that have been following the teachings of John, not knowing everything about Jesus, not knowing of the promise of the Holy Spirit. And it's like God led him right to those people, to the people who are ready to hear and ready to receive. And with those 12 men, they transformed the city of Ephesus. It sounds a little like Jesus, doesn't it? I think Paul is becoming more and more like Jesus through his journeys. His strategies of reaching people change. It starts out traveling a lot and starting churches and staying just 2 or 3 weeks in cities. And that was effective a little bit. But here we have now he's staying for 2 to 3 years, gathering disciples around him and really pouring himself into these disciples. And it says that they met every day for discussions in the lecture hall of Tyrannus, not in the synagogue. They kind of already got kicked out of that, but in the lecture hall of Tyrannus, a public place for ideas and discussion. And they met there regularly. And through this, it says, all the Jews and the Greeks who lived in the province of Asia heard the word of the Lord. Wow, what a blessing, what an encouragement to us that it doesn't matter that we just start with just 2 or 3 people, that with 12 disciples, we can change the world. And we've already seen that Jesus did that, and Paul does it again here in Ephesus. And I love what it says in verse 11 and 12. God did extraordinary miracles through Paul, so that even the handkerchiefs and aprons that had touched him were taken to the sick, and their illnesses were cured, and the evil spirits left him. We are quick to underestimate the power of God, aren't we? I know that it's something that I have to keep in my mind, that no. What I've seen in the past, what I know is true for the natural world, does not have to be true for God's Spirit. And so what a good reminder that is for us. So Ephesus was also the place for the Temple of Artemis, which becomes the center of the discussion here for the second half of chapter 19. It was a major center of religion for that part of the world, for the eastern part of the Roman Empire. And it was a huge temple. It was first built in the 6th century BC. So it has stood for 600 years now. It fell and was rebuilt, and fell and rebuilt a couple times in that. But this is a significant historical feature, and it was so beautiful at this time that it was considered at that time one of the 7 wonders of the world. So this is not like, a little tiny insignificant place. This is huge. This is famous. This is the identity of the people who live in Ephesus was wrapped up in this temple of Artemis, or also called Diana. And of course, once the gospel starts to affect people's pocketbooks, that's when they start to get upset. And we see the silversmiths and the craftsmen there getting together and trying to remind people of their identity in Diana and how much their livelihoods depend on it, and lifting up Diana. And so it all turns into this it looks like a chaotic scene, and they go to the theater and they're going to try Paul, and they wanted to get him before the crowd, but Paul's friends would not let him go. He wanted to go. He was not afraid of going, and his friends would not let him. But this theater, there's still ruins of it there, this exact place where Paul stood, and it would have seated 26,000 people. I mean, this is like a stadium size. I mean, this is a huge place. And the whole group, it seems like, was in total confusion, and they were trying to get the Christians, trying to kind of start to persecute them and try to get the crowd riled up. And the city clerk really put an end to it. And I love his wise words in this section, and he really puts them all in their place, and it turns into nothing. And there is no persecution at this time, and they kind of go on from there, and they move on. But that is the beginning of the church at Ephesus. This band of 12 disciples who meet Paul, and from that, these lectures in the hall of Tyrannus, and the gospel spread from Ephesus to the entire area. Ephesus was a major trade port. It was on a significant land routes as well. So it's easy for people who come to the area to hear the gospel and then take it to where they live. And we see the gospel spreading in that way in many, many times, but especially here in Ephesus. So that's what I wanted to say today about the Church of Ephesus, and there's so much more that we know, but I'll leave that for maybe another time, or for you to discover as you read the scriptures yourself, and hope that this has just been an encouragement to you that, sometimes I think we limit what God can do, and this story of what happens at Ephesus is a really good reminder that God has big plans and big dreams, and He just needs a few people that are 100% sold out, dedicated to Him. And through those people, He can change the world. I hope that you'll be one of those disciples as we seek to change our community and our place, our home here in Southern Indiana. May God bless you, and I hope that today, this Mother's Day, that you will be blessed as we worship together in this way.